Welcome into another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers, and this is a mailbag episode. We're excited to dive into all of your guys' questions on a number of different topics. Should be a good time. But before we do that, Jack, I felt like it made sense for us to talk about Zac Gallen because he pitched very, very well for the Diamondbacks in their game on Tuesday night against the San Francisco Giants. They win that game 8-2. Gallen, Jack, 7 innings, 2 runs, only one of them earned, 0 walks, 10 strikeouts. I guess you want to see more, but this was a huge step in the right direction for Zac Gallen.
Yes, it was. He had a terrific fastball last night. Some of his secondaries, cutter, as you pointed out to me earlier, wasn't going so great. But that's probably as good a fastball as we've seen from him in quite some time, both in terms of just the life it seemed to have and his ability to command it. He didn't walk a batter, which is, like first and foremost, the number one thing that was encouraging to me. There was some hard contact in there, especially early in the game. First 3 innings, he had, I think, 6 of 8 hard hit balls, including 5 over 100. But then he just started striking guys out and not giving up a whole lot of contact at all. And the contact he gave up after the 3rd inning was a lot softer. So kudos to Zac. It was really good to see him turn it around that way. It was good to see him happy in the clubhouse too. He was about as lighthearted and happy as I've seen him in quite some time, naturally and understandably. So that was good to see as well.
The outing really did start in kind of a similar way to what we've seen recently, right? The first inning, he was fine. I think he threw 19 pitches. He was able to get through it without allowing a run. But then he came back in the second inning. He struck out Dominic Smith, and then he had an 0-2 count on Willy Adames, and Willy Adames just hit a hanging slider over the fence. It was like, all right, there's another home run allowed by Zac Gallen. This is just kind of par for the course. A couple batters later, the Giants wind up scoring another run. It was pretty quickly 2-0 against him. But yeah, as you said, he settled in a way that we have not seen Zac settle in a long, long time. And for me, Jack, the only other outing this season where I think Zac looked maybe more impressive than he did in this one was that April 2nd start against the New York Yankees, where he had 13 strikeouts and generated 24 whiffs. Really one of the best outings that Zac Gallen has probably ever had. This game, I think, kind of compared to that in some ways. I mean, he had 10 strikeouts in this game, 16 whiffs in this one. Yeah, there was the 2 runs and the 1 earned, but 0 walks, as you said. The only other time this season he hasn't walked anyone was that April 2nd start against the Yankees. So, I know back then we wondered if that April 2nd start would be something that would be kind of start a trend for him that would last a while. That wound up not being the case. But Gallen, I still think we all believe that he has a lot of talent and has the ability to turn this thing around. And maybe this time, maybe this is going to be the start of something.
And the other point is simply confidence, right? If this
Yeah.
start can help propel him and give him a little bit more confidence to attack the zone and not nibble around the edges, then that gives him a better chance to get on a run. He also will pitch, I believe, Sunday, right, against the Royals, and he's going to miss the Padres series. If
Yeah.
that's that being the case, right? He's scheduled to pitch Sunday against the Royals. So, I think the Royals are kind of scuffling a little bit offensively as well this year. So, getting back-to-back outings against 2 struggling lineups is probably a good way to get your confidence up. And then maybe that can, at the very least, increase his trade value if the D-backs go down that road. But more importantly, really, for a team that is still trying to get to the postseason, give him the confidence and allow him to get on a run. So, great night for Zac Gallen and the way he was able to get through that lineup. Let's see how it goes going forward.
I think it might also be worth mentioning really quick that James McCann has come in and joined the Diamondbacks and appears to be Zac Gallen's designated catcher of sorts, I guess. He's caught both of Zac Gallen's outings so far. And there is a bit of a difference here, Jack, from the conversations I've had with you being in the clubhouse, where James McCann and Gallen appear to have developed some kind of rapport. And it seems like maybe that's a relationship that continues to flourish for a while.
Yeah, one thing that was interesting was that Zach said that McCann called every pitch but one, and I think the only one that Zach called was the one to Adames. So he kind of laughed about that a little bit, but he said, "Yeah, I mean, if I threw 100 pitches, which it was close to, I think, McCann called 99 of them." And so the rapport between the two seems to have developed very quickly. McCann has looked pretty good behind the plate to this untrained eye. I think that just watching his motions and movements and he looks very catcherish behind the plate. I've seen him play before, but not in a while live, and it seems to look better than his defensive metrics anyway. And of course, he also had a great play at the plate, making a terrific tag on a throw that was strong, but a little bit up the line from Alec Thomas.
Yeah.
To nail a runner at home, and that play was really huge. I mean, that was kind of the turning point of the game. That big defensive play there is momentum in baseball, and that certainly was it, making that play. So also great, and McCann hit a home run as well in the game. So just a great
Yeah.
night overall for him.
Yeah, he's 4 for 8 with a homer, a double, and 3 walks to start his Diamondbacks career at the plate. So impressive stuff on both sides of the ball for James McCann. We'll see if that continues. Before we move on, figure we'll take a quick look at the standings. I said it the other day, Jack, where this Diamondbacks team, you really never know. The moment you think they're out of it, they start to win again, and they kind of convince you they've got a shot. And that's sort of what's happened here the last couple of days as the Diamondbacks go from 5 games out of the wild card to 3, as you can see here. The Reds, Giants, and Padres are still separating them from that third wild card spot. But some of these teams have started to cool down here a little bit.
Yeah, I'm tempted to do a bad Al Pacino impersonation. Just when I thought they were out of it, they pulled
Yeah.
me back in. Jake McCarthy had some interesting choice words
You
for the
did.
doubters yesterday at the end of the broadcast. It was kind of fun if you haven't had a chance to listen to that. But Jake was very emphatic in saying that folks that are counting the team out and don't believe they have a chance don't know bleep.
That was a fun moment. Jake has also continued to hit well. Of course, had the big 3-run homer in the game last night. Another narrative to keep an eye on here for sure. Well, we're gonna go ahead and jump into all of your guys' mailbag questions. We are excited to do so, and we will do that on the other side of this break.
We're going to take you through the latest card that I pulled in my Arena Club slab pack, AJ. And here it is. I pulled a Jared Jones card. So Jared Jones is going to be out for a minute, but I'm going to hold on to this one for the long term. He was nasty in his rookie season.
Agreed. This is a great card to pull. It's going to go up in value once he comes back because this guy dealt in his rookie season, gets punch outs, he gives the innings. Once he's back, Scott, you're in it for the long term. Don't give up on Jared Jones or this card you got from Marina Club.
Yep, there it is. That's how you pull a slab pack card. It's very cool. It's all fancy and digital. You can get it sent to you physically. And if you want to sell it right back to Arena Club, you can do that with their buyback option right away, or you can hold it. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase. Just go to arenaclub.com/FOUL. Use code FOUL. We've been talking about Arena Club all season long because they dominate the hobby. If you buy, sell, trade, collect, go for it.
We are back here on Snakes territory, and let's go ahead and answer some mailbag questions. Our first question comes from Cole Hunt. How crazy would we be to trade Jordan Lawlar for a big bullpen arm with a top 3 OPS in the league and the starters coming around? Seems like bullpen is the issue and would be worth mortgaging the future a bit. Jack, what do you think about this?
That's a tough one. I mean, I don't disagree at all about the fact that the biggest area to fix, of course, is the bullpen, and it has seemed to be what's holding the team back all year. So no argument there whatsoever. That's a correct assessment. It's hard for me to imagine Mike Hazen trading Jordan Lawlar for a reliever, unless it was somebody with 3 years of control or under a very manageable contract. and a top tier reliever at that. So if we're talking about trading even for a guy with 1+ year control, even a really good reliever, let alone a rental, that's just not a very likely scenario that Mike Hazen would go down.
I'm just trying to imagine what reliever would warrant that. Like, is there any reliever that is actually that desirable? I know Emmanuel Clase, like, we're always wondering if the Guardians might trade him. But, I mean, he has a 3.28 ERA this year and a 1.43 whip. So you still believe in Emmanuel Clase in the bigger picture, but I don't think you're trading Jordan Lawlar for a guy who has a 1.43 whip this year. Yohan Duran of the Minnesota Twins, I think, is an enticing option potentially. But I think he has one more year of control, if I'm remembering right. Maybe it's 2. It might be 2 years for Duran. Let me check. Yeah, it's 2. So Duran has 2 more years of control. One of the most dominant relievers in baseball, has been for a while. But still, are you trading Jordan Lawlar for 2+ years of a really good back end reliever with how volatile relievers are? I would probably say no, Jack. I think the Diamondbacks could be willing to move Jordan Lawlar. I don't know that for a fact, but in my view, it would have to be for a controllable starter. Like, if I have an opportunity to acquire a controllable starter who's young, who has a lot of years left, more than just 1 or 2, and could be a part of this rotation for a long time, that's where I would at least be open to considering it.
I think there's two, as in a lot of times in these things, it's should versus would, right?
Yeah.
Should the Diamondbacks go all in and do whatever it takes to, cobble together a lights out bullpen, starting with moving their most tradable asset to do that? There's definitely a should component to this that people can make the case. But when you look at the would I just don't believe Mike Hazen would trade Jordan Lawlar for a reliever unless it was someone like a Duran that has 3+ years of control. Even for 2 years of control of him, I don't see Mike Hazen doing that.
Yeah, Duran is just the rest of 25 and then 26 and 27. So it's 2.5 years of control, basically. Yeah, I'm with you there. Our next question comes from the basketball and football guy. The 8th inning has been a struggle for the D-backs pitching. Obviously, Beeks hasn't worked out in that role. So who would you like to see take over? Ginkel, Curtis, Murillo, maybe even Kyle Backus? Jack, it was interesting on Monday, the first game of this Giants series, that John Curtis was Torey Lovullo's go-to in the 8th inning of what was then it was a close game. And Curtis, to his credit, he pitched pretty well. Shelby Miller did wind up getting a 4-out save to finish the job. But yeah, this is a big question. The Diamondbacks right now, other than Shelby Miller, with the struggles that Jalen Beeks has had recently, I mean, there really isn't anyone else who has any kind of track record in the big leagues and is also pitching well currently. I guess Ryan Thompson, maybe he's at least bounced back to some degree here recently. Do any of these names stand out to you?
I think they're just going to ride the hot hand and matchups. I mean, and availability, right? Those are the 3 things. Who's available? How do they match up with that, whatever spot in the order happens to come up in the 8th inning? And how, what's the availability of the guy, right? I mean, Curtis got that shot because nobody else was really available.
Yeah.
Amongst guys that he might consider. So, again, Beeks, we talked about it the other day. He did a really good job for a long time in that role. And he may get it back. Kyle Backus is a rookie who, is doing really well. It's hard for me to imagine, though, Torey saying, okay, that's my 8th inning guy, right? But if there's a couple of lefties in the 8th inning, then why not use them? Of course he would. So, I think you just have to look at the matchups, look at where they are in the lineup. My advice to fans at home would be look at 2 things, start looking at 2 things, at least by the 5th or 6th inning, which is try to forecast where you're going to likely be in the lineup in the batting order by the 8th, and then look at who's pitched how much lately. And
Yeah.
that'll pretty much tell you who's likely to get in the game.
Yeah, that's well said. I agree with you that I think it's just going to be kind of a matchups thing for the time being. If the Diamondbacks are buyers at the trade deadline in a few weeks, though, I think it's pretty clear, Jack, from what we've heard from Mike Hazen. I know he was on John Heyman and Joel Sherman's show yesterday. I think he probably would like to get a closer. I mean, of course, who doesn't want a closer at the trade deadline? But I think Mike Hazen in particular would like to acquire a closer so that Shelby Miller isn't forced into this closing role that he was never really brought here to be in the first place. If you could back Shelby up into a 7th or 8th inning role, and then you have that 9th inning lockdown, I think that would help a lot. That's maybe the hope for the Diamondbacks here in these next few weeks. Of course, we'll see what happens with the trade deadline. Still a lot of baseball left to be played. Our next question comes from Gabby Dirth over on Twitter. This is a good one. The 2023 World Series run was, of course, amazing, but do you think it kind of set the expectations too high for what has been a pretty clearly good but not great team? And I think that is a very fair assessment, Jack. I mean, let's face it, that 2023 team won 84 games and had a negative run differential. I mean, it was two great starting pitchers in Zac Gallen and Merrill Kelly. It was an offense that was just kind of, took good at bats and did just enough. Corbin Carroll obviously was fantastic. Ketel Marte had a good season. Christian Walker as well. The D-backs were defensively sound. And their bullpen was not good at all in the first half and just got really hot down the stretch. And they were able to really ride that all the way into a deep postseason run. But I think we can say objectively, in retrospect, that baseball team on paper was not all that great necessarily. And last year's team, obviously, the offense was fantastic, but the pitching was really a huge issue. And that's ultimately why that team wasn't able to go very far. And of course, that issue has continued into 2025 as well.
Yeah, that last year's team had a plus 98 run differential. Despite the bad pitching, that's how great the offense was. They scored 886 runs.
It's crazy.
Just a little bit better pitching. They actually had a 90-win Pythagorean expected one loss based on run differential. Would have been nice to have that extra win.
Yeah.
Right now, after the 8-2 win last night, the D-backs have a plus 10 run differential. So I think this is a really valid point. It is a good but not great team, or it's been a good but not great roster. But, they added Corbin Burnes to this roster. Corbin Burnes still leads the team amongst pitchers in Baseball Reference WAR. He's first, Merrill Kelly is second, and Shelby Miller's third in Baseball Reference pitcher WAR. So, if Corbin Burnes had remained healthy and, kept on the track that he was going by the time he got hurt, he'd really seemed to turn it on. It's possible that this team could have elevated itself into better than just good.
Yeah.
Of course, the injuries to Puck and Martinez. I mean, it's fun to fantasize like just how good this team would have been with Burnes, Puck, and Martinez all healthy and pitching to the top of their potential. If you'd had that kind of luck this season between those three, I mean, we're looking at a team that's probably breathing down the Dodgers' necks.
Yeah, that's fair. And unfortunately for the Diamondbacks, that is not at all how the season has actually progressed. But yeah, I think it's
the only other thing I'll say about this is it's kind of anecdotal. It's just a gut feeling, but we've all talked about it before. The Diamondbacks have always seemed to play better when the expectations are low, and they seem to have a tougher time when the expectations are high. And that's true in a micro sense, week to week, month to month, and even season to season. They just, when there's very few or little expectations, they seem to do much better.
We've even seen that this week, right? All right, they're 5 games out. People are talking about the Diamondbacks being surefire sellers, and then they go out and beat the Giants twice, and now they're basically in the same position in the wild card race that they were several days before that. This is what this team does, Jack. This is their specialty. Our next question comes from Cade Richards over on Twitter. With Puck and Martinez out for most, if not all, of 26, this trade period is about retooling for 2026. With the need for an effective bullpen, doesn't it make more sense to try and re-sign Shelby Miller rather than trade him and add additional controllable arms around him? Yeah, this is a great point that regardless of how the Diamondbacks approach the trade deadline this season, they still have a bullpen to fill out for 2026. And Justin Martinez and AJ Puck are not going to play a big role in that, especially Justin Martinez, now that he had the full Tommy John surgery. I think you'd just be happy to see him pitch at all in 2026. So yeah, this is something the Diamondbacks are going to have to figure out, Jack. Even if they do sell at the trade deadline this year, I guess the issue with Shelby Miller is that given the season he's had, I think the price tag there is actually might be not super high, but I think the Diamondbacks would have to pay a decent amount of money at this point to bring Shelby Miller back.
Well, it's a great question, and we don't know, of course, what background conversations have been had. Who knows? I mean, maybe someone from Mike Hazen's office has already reached out to Shelby's agent and said, "Hey, are you guys interested in doing an extension?" Maybe his agent asked the Diamondbacks, "Are you guys interested in doing an extension? He likes being back here." I mean, those kinds of conversations may or may not have been going on. So that's the first thing. And if they have, which side is most interested in doing that? It would seem like a pretty good move. I mean, Shelby Miller has looked really good. I mean, his fastball looks, super alive, and when he's got that going together with command of his splitter, he's lights out. There are days or games where he doesn't really have the splitter, but he's been able to rely on the fastball. So, he's been a godsend. I think that it's a really interesting concept. It certainly wouldn't seem to be a bad idea. The longer you go into the season with Shelby Miller as your closer, the more expensive he gets.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do that, you would want to do it soon. So maybe if there is a thought on the part of the Diamondbacks to extend Shelby Miller, there probably should be a sense of urgency. So good call, kid.
The other thing I'll say on this is that, Shelby Miller, I as much as he's pitched well for the Diamondbacks this season and had a really great year, I don't know if Shelby would command a whole lot for the Diamondbacks in a trade, Jack. Like, absolutely, a team would be interested. If the D-backs are willing to move him, he would probably get moved. But for 2 months of Shelby Miller, I don't know that you're getting a ton for him. And so if I were the Diamondbacks, even if I were kind of leaning in the sell direction at the deadline, if I still felt like I had a chance, maybe a shot at going somewhere in 2025, I think you could maybe justify keeping Shelby Miller in that instance, because it's like, well, we're not going to get a ton for him necessarily if we trade him, so let's just keep him around, and that'll make our bullpen significantly more valuable than it would be without him.
Yep, absolutely. Makes sense.
Well, we have a whole lot more mailbag questions to get to, and we are going to keep going through all of them here on Snakes Territory. We'll be back right after one more break. Nothing says summer like long days, clutch plays, and firing off a few bets on the game, all with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you've never bet on baseball before, it's easy. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, new customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Well, our next mailbag question comes from Ruth Ferguson over on Twitter. Ruth says, this is a serious question. Torey removed Ryan Nelson a little early last night, speaking of Monday night's game, because he didn't want to risk injury. With all the injuries, obviously this isn't working. Shouldn't this team develop some toughness? Aren't they too overly protective of their players? Jack, this, of course, was a big topic of conversation on Monday when Ryan Nelson was absolutely shoving against the San Francisco Giants. And Torey Lovullo, at 88 pitches, made the decision to take Nelson out of the game in the 7th inning. And unfortunately, Juan Murillo came in and gave up both inherited runners on the very first pitch that he threw. It was not a great look. All is well that ends well, I guess. The Diamondbacks wound up winning that game. But it was a controversial decision for sure. And I know you were there in person talking to Torey and Nelly after the game, and it sounds like there was a substantive reason for this.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to talk about this in certain areas, but I think in this case, since they opened up the can of worms, I feel confident that I can go ahead and mention it. Players are always have something bothering them, right? There's always an ice pack, a stim machine on somebody's back, some kind of treatment going on. And we don't really comment on it because it's normal. I mean, throughout the course of a season, you're going to see guys with ice packs on their arms and ice packs on their shoulders, but not every pitcher, not every time. Every time after Ryan Nelson throws a bullpen, or the next day after a game, you see him with a very large ice pack on his arm. And we don't see that all the time. Like, I don't see Zac Gallen or Merrill Kelly with the ice packs on their arms all the time. Now, maybe they stay in the trainer's room and they don't let the media see it. So I can't really judge. But I've been wondering all season long, like, what's bothering him? How bad is that? Is that normal soreness, or is a little bit more? And, during the post-game press conferences, Torey started to allude to the fact that Ryan's dealing with some things. He's dealing with some soreness. And then when we spoke to Ryan himself, initially he's like, well, I felt okay. And then once we pressed him a little bit more, our good friend Nick Procoro kind of, pushed him a little bit. He finally kind of sheepishly, well, we're always dealing with something. And he also said, hey, I also got hit on the leg 10 days ago by a comebacker, and I've been dealing with that. So, look, Ryan Nelson is too important to this team to take any risks with him getting hurt. And because of the early season usage pattern where he was bounced back and forth between long relief, which sometimes kind of almost got shortened up, and then trying to get him stretched back out, they're being cautious with him. I mean, to answer Ruth's question, I'd ask you back. So they have all these pitcher elbow and arm injuries, and the team and the training staff and the manager are getting completely lambasted, for the way that may have managed these players. And I've gotten lambasted for defending the training staff and medical staff. Now we want to throw all caution to the wind and just say, F it, let's go for it, and toughen these guys up mid-season. It's just not a very realistic way to go about it. You probably just end up with more injuries. Now, if you want to have a larger conversation about how players should be conditioned as they're coming up as youth and kids, teenagers, and into their college days, if they go to college, and how they're trained in the minor leagues, that's a really great conversation to have. It's also the holy grail of pitching and player development. But in game 82 of the season, mid-season, when you have a guy with a sore elbow, no, you're only going to make things much worse by forcing them to quote unquote toughen up. I'm sorry.
I don't have a lot to add there. That was all very well said. Just that in Ryan Nelson's case in particular, I just want to underscore what you said about how important he is to this team and the fact that he had such an odd beginning to the year. I know you and I at the time were kind of wondering, like, all right, how are the Diamondbacks going to do this with Ryan Nelson? He's been in the bullpen, but he's not really stretched out now. Could he even go back to starting? And the Diamondbacks have used him as a starter. They really didn't have a choice when the Corbin Burns injury happened. But yeah, it's hard for me to push back against any decision right now with Ryan Nelson where the team is being cautious with him. I think with him in particular, that really is the right move. And that's not to say that, maybe there are other examples of this that we could talk about where Torey maybe should have let a guy go a little bit deeper in games. I think that's fair. Ryan Nelson is not one of those guys for me. Another mailbag question we have here comes from @AZSportsFan01. Do you all think Torey will finish out his contract with the D-backs, or will the front office let him go before the end of his contract? This is a tough one, Jack. I believe Torey's contract is through 2026. Am I getting that right?
That's correct.
So you've got basically a year and a half of Torey being under contract as it is right now. Given the way that this team is playing, I don't really envision the Diamondbacks moving on from Torey after this season, Jack. Even if the Diamondbacks miss the postseason, I think the number of injuries that this team has had to endure makes it hard for you to look at the manager as being the issue here. And as I've also talked about recently with Nick Picoro on this show, Mike Hazen does not seem to be the type of person, at least in this scenario, to point the finger at his manager and say that he's the problem. I think Hazen, if things don't work out for the Diamondbacks this year, is probably going to be looking at himself, for not having enough bullpen depth and so forth, rather than looking at Torey Lovullo as the issue.
That's 100% correct. I mean, I can tell everyone here that barring just wild, unforeseen circumstances and a complete and total meltdown of the team and of the manager himself and some kind of falling out between him and Mike Hazen, I mean, anything could happen, but that's pretty unlikely. There's virtually very little chance, if any, that Torey Lovullo would be let go before the end of this season. Now, the question was whether or not he would be let go before the end of his contract. And
Right.
lame duck years are pretty tricky. I'll say this. If the Diamondbacks manage to get into the postseason this year, expect him to get another extension before the start of next year. If they don't get into the postseason, then he's going to be a lame duck manager heading into his last contract year. And it really will kind of depend on how things are going in 2026. So there is a possibility that if he's in his lame duck year and the team is doing very poorly in 2026 after having missed the postseason in 2025, at that point, ownership may step in and say, hey, we need a new voice. That can happen. And I think Mike Hazen would probably still resist that. Again, Torey is being evaluated far differently by Mike Hazen than even we would or the average fan would. He's just not being evaluated the same way we and fans evaluate the situation. He's evaluated on, is he in line and aligned with what the front office wants, what their program is, how they want to see the team that they put together utilized, and is he getting the most he possibly can out of the players, and are they motivated to work hard, practice hard, be disciplined, and play hard during the games. And so whenever you hear Mike Hazen talk about Torey, he gives him high scores on all of those things. So he's not just looking at the one-loss record, and he's even specifically defended Torey multiple times, on bullpen decisions, the things that fans get up in arms about the most, is an area where Mike Hazen was very dismissive of those criticisms.
Yeah. If you think the Diamondbacks are going to let Torey Lovullo go over his bullpen management, regardless of what what you guys or really what any media member, regardless of what any of us think, that's just not going to happen. The Diamondbacks are not critical of Torey Lovullo in that way. And of course, Jack, if he is a lame duck manager heading into 2026, he is no stranger to that. I think that would be his fourth year, I want to say, where he would be a lame duck manager. It's something that he's done quite a lot. I believe 2023, the year the D-backs went to the World Series, he was a lame duck manager that year. The Diamondbacks opted to exercise his option for 2023 in late 2022. So then they exercised that option. And then, of course, he got the larger extension when the Diamondbacks went to the World Series and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it's a position that Torey's been in quite a bit. And he generally has convinced the Diamondbacks to keep him around. I mean, he's going on year 10 as the Diamondbacks manager, if he indeed does make it to next season, which we definitely expect him to.
I wanted to circle back real quick to kind of link this to Ruth's prior question. By the way, in real time, I absolutely questioned pulling Ryan Nelson from that game,
Sure.
not knowing that his arm was probably sore, and that they were, really had a much more limited pitch count. In real time, I thought, wow, what's he doing? Why isn't he letting him go one more batter here? He deserves the chance and all of
Yeah,
that.
2 outs,
Um,
right? Let him get out of the inning.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I was right there with everybody. The difference being that I had the opportunity to speak to both the manager and the pitcher and hear them and see them and watch their facial expressions and kind of, get a read there of where things were at. The other point on Ryan, real quick, is Torey said expect him to be in that same pitch count limit over his next couple of starts. So they're going to try to keep him under 85 in his next 2 outings.
Yeah, I guess just a very long, extended runway where eventually they'll get him back up to maybe the 90 to 95 range. We'll see how that goes. Our next question here comes from J Army Strong AZ. He says, if Hazen decides to sell, what could the roster potentially look like? Does Reno essentially get cherry picked? And that is a very fair question because the Diamondbacks don't have ready replacements, especially if they trade starting pitchers, something we've talked about recently. If Zac Gallen and Merrill Kelly are not in the organization, then I guess Anthony DeSclafani steps into the rotation and Bryce Jarvis gets called up from Reno. It doesn't feel like an ideal scenario. I'm still a little bit skeptical, Jack, that the Diamondbacks will be aggressive sellers. I could see them doing some selling. But I still think that them being aggressive sellers where they really go all out, that feels like maybe the least likely outcome to me, just knowing what we know about Mike Hazen and the fact that Diamondbacks still want to contend in 2026. So yeah, but there are some scenarios where it's like, all right, if you trade these guys and you don't backfill, then we don't really know how this is going to work out.
Right. Well, I tried to handicap a few potential call-ups. Depends on who's traded, right? If they traded one or both of if they traded one of Zac Gallen or Merrill Kelly, as you said, probably Anthony DeSclafani would get the opportunity to get stretched out and start. Or maybe they would, and then they maybe would bring up Bryce Jarvis to take DeSclafani's long man role. If they needed 2 pitchers that could give length or start, then the next guy after Jarvis, I would kind of, right now, if I'm handicapping it, would say Dylan Ray, maybe starting to earn a shot. Dylan Ray kind of impressed the other day because he gave up a couple of solo homers in the second inning of his last outing. And he didn't get scared out of the strike zone, and he completely, just plowed into it, leaned into it, and threw strikes and put up a bunch of donuts after that and pitched into the 7th inning. And he only needed 75 pitches to do so. So, that's learning how to pitch in the crucible of the PCL. And so that was a really good sign for him. Again, when you're looking at how guys are doing in the Pacific Coast League, kind of don't look at the ERA. You have to kind of dig under the hood at everything else that's going on there. If they traded Eugenio Suarez and Jordan Lawlar's over his hamstring injury, which hopefully by the end of July he is, then that would seem the natural call-up to bring him up and put him in at third base and let him play every day for the rest of the season and let the chips fall where they may. So that would be a silver lining to a move of Eugenio Suarez, if that happens to be the road they go down, in that Jordan Lawlar would actually finally get, at least 2 straight months of opportunity there. If they moved Josh Naylor, maybe Tristan English would get a shot. I think he's 28 years old, but he's been, hitting the snot out of the ball. Trey Mancini just opted out of his deal. And he's no longer in the Diamondbacks organization. He's no longer with the Reno Aces. A lot of times in a case like that, maybe he knew he had an opportunity to go elsewhere. It'll be interesting to see if Trey signs anywhere. And then Adrian Del Castillo is back behind the plate and catching again. He's had a lot of injuries this year. Hopefully he can, stay healthy and perform the rest of the year, both behind the plate and at the plate. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some time in the major leagues over the final couple months of the year. if the Diamondbacks sell and open up some roster space.
Yeah, I'm interested in if they were to trade Josh Naylor, would Adrian Del Castillo be the call up or would Tristan English be the call up? Because you could just make Pavin Smith your everyday first baseman, and then maybe Adrian Del Castillo slots into sort of being your everyday DH. I think that could make some sense, but do the Diamondbacks still believe in Del Castillo behind the plate, and is that still their top priority for them? I guess that would be the main question there.
Yeah, well, Pavin Smith's another whole conversation, unfortunately. He's hitting 210 with a 650 OPS over the last 2+ months. So, that's not great. And it's a problem because he doesn't have options. He's out of options, right? And so, all of a sudden he's playing himself into potentially DFA territory or even, not yet. We've heard Pavin can hit over and over again, and they're not close to that. But, one more month of this, they can't send him back to Reno. So what are you going to do? If there's a sell situation, then, sure, let him play for the rest of the year. But if they're in it and they're buying and they keep Naylor and they keep Suarez and he's still not hitting at all a month from now, they got a tough decision on their hands there too.
Yeah, it's a good point. Our last question on this episode of Snakes Territory comes from @DonnieDruin. Shout out Donnie, who does great work with SI covering the Cardinals as well as the Suns, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So shout out Donnie. Who is one realistic and one dream trade target at the deadline that you're eyeing? This is a tough one, Jack. I'll let you go first.
Well, people that have followed me for a number of years probably won't be surprised. I'm going to throw the dream acquisition for me for this year in a buy situation would be David Bednar. I still have faith. But again, he's a case where, reliever volatility is thy name. On May 23rd, he had a 5.52 ERA. Now it's 2.73.
Yeah.
So that's the life of a reliever. But, David Bednar is one of those guys that could come in here, take over the closer's role and let Shelby go be the primary setup guy. And all of a sudden you have a pretty dynamic back end of the bullpen there in the 8th and 9th inning. And David Bednar is under control through the end of 2026. So that would be a dream scenario for me. I don't know if it's a dream scenario for Mike Hazen based on what the cost might be. Bednar is a well-known Pittsburgh guy, and whether or not you can pry him loose from the Pirates, that's another question altogether. Probably a more realistic would be his teammate, left-hander Caleb Ferguson, who would be a pure rental. He's a left-hander having a very good year, and he's got a career 3.43 ERA. I mean, he's a pretty good left-handed pitcher. Especially if Jalen Beeks is not able to kind of right his ship here, then they may need to, go out and look for another left-handed pitcher as a rental. Or if they wanted to go again for another Pirates reliever, Dennis Santana's got an ERA of 1.5, and he's under control through all of 2026. So kind of depends on where they're at, but I think it's a little bit more realistic to maybe pay a little lower price and get a rental reliever here in this situation as your realistic choice.
Are we sensing a trade package from the Pirates where the D-backs get Bednar, Santana, and Ferguson all in the same deal, Jack? Maybe that's the dream
going to
happen.
No, I mean they'll if they want to trade all three of those guys, they'll parse them out for the max return between two or three different teams.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, so my dream trade here I think is a little bit dreamier than David Bednar. Bednar, I think there's a pretty decent chance Bednar gets moved. It's not to say that it's going to be easy to acquire him. I guess it is kind of a dream scenario in that sense. You feel like you'd almost be winning the lottery to have the winning offer to get someone like Bednar. But my name here is a little bit dreamier than that, Jack. Freddie Peralta of the Milwaukee Brewers, who it is a dream scenario in a sense, but also Freddie Peralta is listed on ESPN's list of trade candidates at the trade deadline. They said that Freddie Peralta has a 20% chance of being dealt at the deadline. I don't know if I really believe that. I think that the Brewers, being in as good a position as they are right now, I know they've done this before. I know they traded Josh Hader in the middle of when they were on track to make the postseason. They haven't been afraid to do these things in the past. But mid-season, I really doubt that they would be willing to trade Freddie Peralta, frankly. But thinking ahead, Jack, I mean, this rotation needs to be filled out, certainly through the end of 26. Peralta is under control through the rest of this season, and then also has an $8 million club option for 2026. I'm not sure the Diamondbacks are going to find a pitcher who is as good as Freddie Peralta and makes less money than he does next year. So he would sort of be the bridge to when Corbin Burns is hopefully able to come back and contribute in 2026. And how crazy am I here, Jack?
The Brewers are 10 games over 500.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a pitcher that has control through 2026 at a pretty cheap contract. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, what would you have to give the Brewers to get Freddie Peralta in the middle of a pennant race? I mean, I can't even imagine what that deal would look like.
Yeah, well, that's why it's the dream category, Jack. So there we go. Very unlikely. It's not going to happen. But my realistic target, there were a few different names that I went through here. A lot of different relievers. Pete Fairbanks and Bednar crossed my mind as someone I might put in the realistic category. Funny enough. Emmanuel Clase as well, although I think he would have had to go in the dream category, if anything. But the name that I'm ultimately going to go with here, Jack, is, this may feel strange, Ryan O'Hearn of the Baltimore Orioles. Yes, the Diamondbacks need bullpen help. We all know it, and the Diamondbacks should go get them some bullpen help. There's going to be a lot of names available. I'm sure there will be someone, maybe a couple of guys that they're able to get, even if they're not necessarily the flashy names at the top of the market. But Ryan O'Hearn, Jack, I think we've mentioned his name on the show before. He is almost certain to be traded by the Baltimore Orioles, who are really effectively out of the race at this point. They've had a really miserable season. And Ryan O'Hearn is basically a Jock Peterson type profile. He's a left-handed hitter, someone the D-backs would probably use at DH, I would imagine. He'd sort of be stepping into that Pavin Smith role, as you were kind of alluding to earlier, if the D-backs felt the need to do that. But Ryan O'Hearn this season is hitting .295 with an .854 OPS. Given the fact that he doesn't provide a ton of defensive value and he's limited against lefties, I don't think he would cost you very much. And just imagining this Diamondbacks lineup at full strength with Corbin Carroll back in it eventually and Gabby Moreno back in it, if you plugged Ryan O'Hearn and Josh Naylor back in it as well, if you plugged Ryan O'Hearn into the middle of that lineup as your number 3 hitter, I mean, I think the Diamondbacks would have just kind of an absurd lineup, especially against right-handed pitching at that point. And, I think it's maybe an underrated way for this team to improve at the deadline. We're all thinking about pitching, but what if you just make your offense like even better than it already is?
If they could improve their pitching at the same time and get Ryan O'Hearn, maybe I'm kind of sliding back towards dream category. If we're talking about getting Ryan O'Hearn at the expense of being able to improve your pitching, that's a different scenario. When scoring 7 runs or more prior to last night's game, 6 runs or more, pardon me, the Diamondbacks had the second worst win percentage in Major League Baseball. When you score 6 runs or more, you're supposed to win over 70-something percent of your games. The Diamondbacks' 6.18 win percentage when scoring 6 runs or more was better only than the Colorado Rockies. They had 13 losses when scoring 6 runs or more. Only the Rockies were within 4 with 9. The Washington Nationals have 7 such losses when scoring 6 runs or more. So I can't really see the viability of just saying, well, we're going to slug our way through it, because they haven't been able to do that so far. How many more runs are you going to add? You're still going to blow a bunch of games if you don't improve this pitching staff.
Yeah, it would definitely. I'm with you in that if you're doing this instead of improving the pitching, then you shouldn't do it. You should get what you feel like you can get in the reliever market and O'Hearn is just kind of an extra, like, the D-backs they might genuinely be looking for someone like O'Hearn, because if Pavin Smith continues to falter and, he's been hitting third for this team for a while, you probably want someone else to step in there.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you that the cost on him shouldn't be too high. So if they were able to get a controllable closer type reliever, and maybe one more reliever that's a rental. Okay, so let's go back to the dream scenario. Maybe they get Bednar and Ferguson in a package deal, and they offload a bunch of prospects to Pittsburgh to shore up their bullpen with those two guys.
Yeah.
And then maybe the cost for O'Hearn wouldn't be so high, but again, there's going to be a pretty long line of teams thinking the same way, that a lot of teams need a left-handed bat. So I don't think it would be as cheap as you're hoping.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's generally how the trade deadline works, right? Is nothing is as cheap as you're hoping. So that's probably true. I think both of my choices here, Jack, probably belong in the dream category. At least if you're thinking in the whole context of, like, you want to get Freddie Peralta and improve the bullpen. You want to get Ryan O'Hearn and improve the bullpen. That's going to be a pretty tall task in either case.
Can I add a question? Tag on my question to you.
Sure.
I have a mailbag question. If Jake McCarthy keeps hitting well and hitting the ball with authority, and this isn't a 1 week blip, what are the Diamondbacks going to do when Corbin Carroll comes back?
Yeah, that's tough. I think if Jake continues hitting this way, you can't send him down. Like, I just don't think you can. I mean, Jake McCarthy is one of the Diamondbacks' better hitters at the moment. I mean, at least that's kind of how it feels. I know it's a super small sample size, but he really has looked locked in ever since he came back up from Reno. I think if the move happened today, Jack, I mean, I hate to speculate, but well, not today. I mean, obviously it's not happening today. We don't even have to really think about that. But if we're in a similar position in a couple weeks when Corbin is ready, I think Alek Thomas might be headed back to Reno.
We'll see. Just another point. It was spoken to yesterday by Torey. Last time Jake got sent out, he did not take it well. He was pissed, and Torey was pretty open about it. We posted a video clip of that discussion over on Diamondbacks on SI's Twitter account. And if you want, Torey's answer was pretty revealing if you really kind of listen carefully and read between the lines a little bit. That was a very uncomfortable discussion for him when he had to send Jake out last time. He did not take that send out well. And he came back with his hair on fire. So this is going to be a really interesting development to watch.
The other angle of this that I'll say real quick is that the trade deadline is coming closer, and if you have too many outfielders and not enough room for them in the lineup, there can be a solution to that, right? I think there's a possibility that, I don't know if you're getting the sun, moon, and stars for either Alek Thomas or Jake McCarthy, but could one of those guys help you land a good back end reliever or something? I think that's pretty possible. We saw the D-backs, trade Josh Rojas, struggling guy in the big leagues, as part of the Paul Sewald trade. So those things do happen.
What about Lourdes?
Would you trade Lourdes? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if Lourdes has a ton of trade value, right? Because he doesn't make nothing. Like, he makes a decent amount of money to the point where I think he produces basically in line with what he makes. So I just don't think you would get much for Lourdes. Whereas I think Jake and Alek, you can still kind of dream on some improvement there, especially with how young Alek is. Maybe that's an unrealistic expectation. I don't know. But I think those guys have more value being earlier in their career and not making as much money at this point.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, Lourdes has the ability to completely carry an offense for a month. Now, we know he also has the ability to give you a 550 OPS for a month. But, a hot Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is a player that can carry your offense. Which neither Jake or Alek will ever be able to do.
That's
And
fair.
so teams might bite on that.
I think if the D-backs are full on sellers, I could maybe see because Lourdes has he has an opt out at the end of this year, so we don't really know what his contract status is going to be going into next year. Yeah, if a team is interested in Lourdes and gives the Diamondbacks an enticing offer and they feel like they're out of the race, then sure, I could see that being one way to resolve this as well.
I don't look at it as maybe them being full on sellers. I mean, again, I'm imagining this buy sell two step. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff up against the wall. But like, what if they traded Lourdes, moved Jake into left field, and use the assets that they got back from Lourdes to bolster some other part of the roster? Maybe there's a team out there that has an extra reliever that has one more year of control, and they need a bat, and they can afford, and they're still in the race. I mean, there's only 6 or 7 teams that are pure sellers right now, and there's a half a dozen or more teams that could be a candidate where I'm going to give you one of my strengths, and you're going to give me one of your strengths, and we're going to see if we can plug each other's holes in the roster. Mike's talked about that kind of deal quite a lot. So don't rule that out. That's all. I'm not projecting anything. I'm not even saying they should do this. There's just a thought that crossed my mind. Like, okay, if Jay keeps hitting, and they've got Alec in center, could they potentially go with an all left-handed outfield? You got Tim Tower as your right-handed utility outfielder. Move Lourdes and strengthen your pitching staff. I don't know. I mean, it's not outrageous to think about.
Yeah, I mean Lourdes has a 99 OPS plus this year. He's making $14 million. To me, it just doesn't feel like a player that would, have a long line of suitors. But I agree, like he would have value to someone at the deadline. I just don't know if you're getting a ton back from him. The other concern I would have is I think your lineup is getting pretty left-handed at that point. Lourdes is someone I think the D-backs really believe in against lefties, and if you have to, at that point, you would have to start Alec Thomas every game against lefties. I guess you could start Tim Tawa, but Tim Tawa has not exactly hit well at all recently. He's really been stuck in a skid for a while now. So that's the other thought that comes to mind for me there.
Okay. Well, I didn't say it was a great idea, but it's just, we're looking over like what happens if Jake stays hot, and so I threw out any and all possibilities. Maybe there's no good idea there at all.
Well, we've thrown around all kinds of fun ideas on this episode, which I think is now officially the longest episode in Snakes territory history. So look at that, we did it. We thank you very much to all of you for sticking with us throughout this mailbag episode. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, you can drop a like on this video. That helps us out a lot. Leave a comment. We'd love to interact with you and hear what you think of all of our crazy ideas. And it also helps us out a ton if you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube as well. You can follow us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman over on X. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. Our show is at Snakes Territory. And Jack, of course, does great work covering the Diamondbacks over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. So be sure to keep it locked over there for all of your latest Diamondbacks news. Thank you again to all of you for sticking with us on this extended edition of Snakes Territory. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory on Friday morning, and we'll see you all then.